Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't a boogie. Ain't a boogie. Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything is straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Next!
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah!
You know who doesn't take off for snow days?
Who's that guy that we interviewed that practices a lot? Ryan Brown.
Ryan Brown and Philly Joe Jones.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. He's going to be busy no matter what, right?
Well, if you recall, John, in our triumphant debut of the Drummers Weekly Groovecast advisory board, we had a little quick aside that I was doing a crazy little goofy gig.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, the kitchen stuff.
Little pots and pans gig.
Right.
Reverting back to the pre-K days.
So that's already happened.
It happened on a snow day.
Oh, that's nutty.
Yeah. And just as another quick aside, did you know that the city of Atlanta, where we are currently broadcasting from, has more measurable snow this year than Chicago?
That is crazy. Especially my sister has been buried in that stuff like forever, who lives up there, and now see, man, Atlanta's going to win something.
We won the snow trophy. But yeah, when I did the pots and
it's
pans,
not that obvious of an inside joke, but we're going to win something.
We're going to win something. The old pots and pans gig happened on a day that we had some snow that paralyzed this fine city of 6 million. So I really didn't have any traffic to deal with getting down there. But I just wanted to give a quick update on how that gig went. I kid you not when I tell you, sirs and ladies that are listening to this show, that was one of the best times I've had in a long time.
That's awesome.
It was big fun. The gig lasted a grand total of about 45 seconds. And essentially what it was a little different than I thought it was going to be when we were talking about it on the previous show. Essentially what it was myself and 3 other percussionists. We were given the run of a large kitchen, and they said, anything you guys want to use to play on, just feel free to go through, test a bunch of stuff, put a bunch of stuff together, and have some fun with it.
Very cool.
So my weapon of choice was a wok and an ice cream scoop. And let me tell you, man, I think the timbre that I achieved from said wok and ice cream scoop should be something that everyone should explore on their own time. It was big fun, man. Basically,
just more stuff to bring to the gig, man. Nah.
Yeah, you can also, if the green room food's not very good, you can go ahead and whip something up.
That was a good point.
Yeah. But essentially all that happened was the 4 percussionists walked out a group of chefs that had prepared basically these full pigs. It wasn't roasted pigs. It was like deep fried pigs, like chicharron style. And we walked.
Wait.
Yeah?
Why wasn't I like your tech that day?
Oh, it was they allowed us to pick apart some of the pig if wanted, so there was so much of it.
Nice.
Anyway, we essentially walked those folks out and then walked right back in. It took longer to actually get our instruments than it did to do the gig, but it was big fun.
Cool. You know the best thing about this is not the 45 seconds, not the pig. It's that Saturday Night Live cannot make fun of you, Bill Smith, because you braved a snow day.
That's true.
Drove downtown and so they can pick on anyone they want, but not you, sir.
Well, that makes me feel good because I do believe that floating somewhere out there is a video of said performance.
Well, they might make fun of that.
They might make
but
fun of that.
They're not going to make fun of your dedication and commitment to getting somewhere.
Would they make fun if I wore a chef's coat that on the back that said, Amazon, please come here?
No one would make fun of that. If you made fun of that, you're an idiot. You I don't care who you are. You want Amazon hanging around if you can make it happen.
True that. But anyway, it was a good time had by all. And something else, there are two other folks that are going to have a good time when they hear what I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
We finally ended up having our drawing for the winners of the Aquarian Drumheads. Too much to get into now, but we had to battle holidays, sickness, travel, you name it. And it just kept delaying the show, or kept delaying the drawing, I should say. But the drawing has been made. The winners have been chosen. And our first prize winner of a brand new set of Aquarian batter heads of their choice is Worship Dude 1000. So Worship Dude 1000, please get in touch with the show. You can email us at drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can just go to the website, drummersweeklygroovecast.com. Or what did I say before? John, did I lose my mind? It was Worship Dude 1000.
Yeah, that's
Email us at drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. I think I said that. I can't remember. Or like I said, you can go to the website and get in touch with us, or you can message us on Facebook. And then our second prize winner of the drum kit tools from Aquarian is Ben Israel Thompson, fellow that you and I both know.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations to those guys. Like I said, you will be able to get in touch with us, and our buddy out at Aquarian Drumheads, Chris Brady, will postal mail it to you guys. John, I've had so much coffee, can't make my freaking mind work.
Man, it should be the opposite.
I'm telling you.
I tell you what, I'm glad we're going to quit getting those nasty emails from the guy who got that Octopus kit for Christmas. Raring to go for those new Aquarian heads.
When are you going to do that drawing, you bunch of slackers?
6-inch to 24-inch. Get them out there, Chris.
Man, boy, thanks again, Chris. We really appreciate it, man. Not like you need any more work to do around NAMM time, right?
Yeah, well, everybody realize that patience is going to be part of the game with this drawing, just as far as shipping goes, because they got their hands full.
True that. Now, John, I have one other quick announcement that I want to make. For those of you who have been accessing the episodes on YouTube, you will notice that there hasn't been a YouTube show posted in a few weeks. And there's a reason for that. I'm done with that, John. Mm-hmm. I thought it would be a good idea to take the show and make it available on the YouTube platform as well. It just, nobody listens to it on there.
No.
I mean,
you gave it a shot.
Yeah,
so
I gave it a shot, but we literally have more people download the audio, the proper podcast through the normal channels within 5 minutes of the show being posted than a lot of people listen to it on YouTube. And I get it. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that there's no video involved in this.
Yeah. People don't associate podcasts with YouTube for the most part, I think.
Right. And so, you go back and you look at some of these shows that have been posted for 6 months and it has 17 views. Come on, man. But I get it. So we tried it for a little while. So those shows, I think I'm just going to go ahead and take them down also.
Kick them to the curb.
Yeah. The only shows that will be posted on YouTube are shows that feature video, like when John and I either do like a host spotlight, or if we do some sort of drawing, or when we do, I should say, the mini episodes. Those
motivation.
Yeah, those things actually have video content. So those, of course, will still be continued on YouTube, but the shows, we're done with that. Everybody just access it through your favorite content provider. Does that sound all right?
A fine decision. I'm behind you 100%.
Right on. So John, let's go ahead and dive into our topic. And much to my surprise, just before we started recording this, I looked at the calendar and I just realized this is our first topic show in, gosh, man, almost 2 months. First one of 2018. Everything we've done so far has kind of been a special show.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually is somewhat unintentional. It wasn't like, oh, in 2018, we're going to do a whole bunch of special stuff right off the bat. It kind of stacked up and ended up that way.
Yeah, it just fell in line that way.
Yeah, we did an artist feature. We did an interview with our folks up at Regal Tip, and then we did our Drummers Weekly Groovecast advisory board. And so here we are with our first topic episode of 2018. And this episode came about a little bit by happenstance because my faithful co-host made a very witty post on social media, and I looked at it and I was like, sir, there's your topic right there.
I don't even remember. Like, you can't say snarky post with me and expect me to pinpoint it. I don't think I put anything else up but snarky post.
Well, I think it had something to do with big band drummers and and big band drummers getting the brunt of the blame for anything that happens inside of that band. And it was something also snarky like the 8 of you that are left. Yeah.
My point was just screw those guys and quit setting up their figures. Let them do their own work and play like Roy Haynes, I think is what I said.
Absolutely, man.
If they're not going to respect your, fat, pleasant big band foundation, then just go do something else.
I completely agree.
All right. Being the big band expert that I am, I think that the 8 people that still do it will agree, and we're going to see a new, just forward-thinking big band. Like, there's just going to be a whole bunch of them come out. I can feel it, man.
Well, I will say this.
High art.
Well, the proof is in the future coming up. We'll see what ends up happening. I don't know. This could end up completely and totally putting the final nail in the coffin of the big band.
There's plenty of people that would mind that.
The big band genre. But there's one other thing I want to mention before we just start getting into the aspects of this topic is that I'm rather proud at the name of this episode. I'm a fan of these pseudo-psychological terms. I've called this show the punching bag syndrome.
I mean,
don't you like? Because you got these other psychological syndromes like the imposter syndrome, the spotlight effect. I love all that kind of stuff. So maybe I've coined something here.
I like it.
The punching bag syndrome.
I'll start spreading it.
You like that?
Yeah, man.
Well, we got to start a wiki page for it.
Okay.
So, John, I thought what we would do, we would take all these different little things that people love to just bug drummers about, and we would talk about them, and then we would give our personal experiences with them and some solutions with them, because, I mean, it's everything from count-offs to tempo issues, volume, underplaying, overplaying, the proverbial can't you read my mind syndrome. And and we'll take all these different things and we'll give some solutions to them and some personal experiences. Because, one of the things I always like to say is if when you finish a gig, if nobody in the band says anything to you, you're doing something right.
Yeah. I kind of even have a new mantra. It's nobody died. Relax.
Well,
so I mean that, like taking it to a lower level than ever, but it's true. Nobody died. I mean,
you know what? I might have an experience with a super jaded, super dark piano player that might have outdone you on that one.
Yeah.
He used to say, any gig that you can walk away from is a good gig.
Where is he?
The last time I saw him, there was a faint smell of sulfur as he left the room. So anyway, let's get into this thing, John, before we alienate anybody else. One of the first hot spots And the one that a lot of folks will like to get onto you about is the infamous count in or the count off.
An anxiety inducer in the certain settings and playing with certain people for sure.
Let me tell you, I don't mind it at all.
I know you wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all.
That's because you don't play with. We're not alienating.
Well,
sorry, man.
I beg to differ. There's definitely some places, man. Some people that like to give you the old stank eye that I play with from time to time. But there's a few things that I like to do, and John, I know that you're a fan of a couple of these also. But one thing, if you've got a metronome close by, use that click for accuracy. Use it to your benefit.
Yes. Keep yourself bulletproof.
Yeah.
At least in regards to the opinions of the tempo on stage. Especially if it's an agreed upon one.
Well, that's the whole thing.
Like, hello.
Yeah, if there's a tune that I'm not 100% confident that is the tempo, even if the metronome's there, what I will do is I'll go, hey guys, here's this song. Here's the click that I like to play it at, and even clap it out for them if they don't have it in their ears, if we're using in-ear monitors. And if they agree upon it, bulletproof.
Lock it in.
Bulletproof.
Yeah, there's also that. Man, I did some gigs recently with, it was like almost all original music and, like just learning that stuff, charting it out and going. And I think the biggest factor in me succeeding on that gig was not knowing the arrangement inside and out. No, it's just from the word go, knowing at least I got the tempo right.
Yep.
That just puts you in such a good place to focus on the things that matter, like some hit or some figure or the arrangement or the length of that bridge, because you're not sitting here thinking like, does he think it's too fast, too slow? It's just, that is an invaluable tool for me.
If you can just get into the tune with the confidence of the tempo and the confidence that the people that you're playing with have agreed to that tempo, you're probably better off than 90% of other people who don't do that.
I completely agree.
Another thing, John, is make sure that when you are counting something in, that you count it in super confidently and also with the right feel, because we all know and have been a part of different groups where there are certain different varying feels inside of a gig, whether you're counting something off that's got a swing feel, a shuffle feel, or a straight eighth feel. And if you're not counting it off, someone has counted it off with the wrong feel, because you can count a swing tune off, but if you kind of intimate whatsoever that there's some straight eighths in it, you're already setting yourself up for disaster. So make sure that you learn how to count these things off with the right feel, because the right feel of the count off is just as important as the actual tempo. And that even goes for example, if you're counting something off that's straight eighth and you count it off straight eighth, but it's a real aggressive up front on the front part of the beat tempo, if you count that thing off real lazily, again, you're kind of setting yourself up for the wrong feel getting into it.
Mm-hmm. Every once in a while, like even like counting a song I know, but in the heat of the battle, and I count it off kind of funky, and it's like, I hate that, man. It happens on occasion, you just like count something in.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about the figure that sets up the phrase or something like that, and it falls funny. Right. Always just have if you got to stop and pause and catch that, so that tune is starting correctly, do that. Don't meander through a count off.
You nailed one thing in particular about pausing just for a second, because I would say that virtually every time that happens on one of my gigs is when I am rushing to get from the end of one song to count in the next.
Yep.
And maybe you've got a little bit of the other song in your mind, and it's either too fast or too slow, and you throw yourself in the ditch, and you got to kind of correct over the first phrase, the first few bars or so.
My favorite is more feel wise, like you're playing kind of a shuffled funk groove, and then the next song's straight eighth, but somehow you realize like into the first chorus you're still kind of shuffling.
Yeah.
You're like, oh crap.
That wasn't
That's when
supposed to happen.
That's when you're just so dead tired. You're like, that felt pretty good. Let's just keep playing that.
So, John, let's talk about when keeping it real goes wrong for a second on these. Do you have a particular course of action that you like to take if you're on a gig and you've been counting in tunes and people are complaining about it? Is there anything in particular you like to do?
Yeah, but rarely is it effective.
Violence.
I just like to offend them with the response, pretty much. No, if it's something within reason, like, man, I just think I'd sing it better a little quicker, or the energy or whatever, I'll work with them. But at the same time, man, it's like when you have someone that'll start tunes and they're just drastically different from gig to gig, that's when I get a little rub, and I might say something like, look, man, this is a shuffle. And, one night you're playing it where it's just swinging like a dog, and the next night it's so fast, I don't even know if I can subdivide, a shuffle feel with, versus, it's like, so that kind of thing. I've gotten a lot more diplomatic about it. I used to be a little more like, whatever. But man, again, if I'm going to sit here and say, man, I want everybody to just feel good about me being back there and doing nothing but grooving, well, then I'm not succeeding if they're not happy with the tempo. So the compromise has become a little more part of my game plan. And as far as opinions go, I think sometimes you need to consider the source too.
That's true. One of the things that I like to do, and I try to do it as diplomatically as possible, although the majority of the time when this happens, it's coming out of frustration, is if people complain about tempos getting into tunes, I'll say, well, look, on the next one you sing or the next one, that you're unsure about, you count it in,
mm-hmm.
and I will get your tempo from that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
In a sub situation, which I've done quite a bit of in the last year or two, every once in a while you'll have like one band leader's like, man, just start playing the groove to the next song.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'll do that, but we might do it 4 p.m. slower than you do or whatever. So all night I don't want you wearing me out about, pick it up, slow it down. If you want me to do that, just trust me, it's going to be close, and my goal is to make it feel good. So relax, because there's definitely been that. Yeah, man, play the next song, and then no, pick it up, slow it down. I'm like, no, that nobody is going to benefit from that.
Yeah, it
so
makes
you
everybody
take what you
uneasy.
Get. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and unless something's just so far gone. But then again, I mean, on those kind of gigs, you have a pretty good idea of most of the tunes you're doing, so it's not like. Then it just becomes micromanaging or some kind of power trip.
One person I want to give mad props to is your good buddy, my good buddy, Mr. Joe Rita. Whenever I sub for you, if there's an occasional tune or two that doesn't have a tempo marking, like a click indication, and if I'm a little bit unsure of it, he's right there, man.
Counting it.
Yeah, he's right there.
Yay, Joe. That's a special fella.
Yeah, yes, he is. John, I want to relate a quick real-time true story to you about our next subtopic.
Oh, boy.
Have you ever been on a gig, and I already know the answer is yes, where you're playing a song, typically a ballad. Sometimes it's not, though. But you don't come in. The drums don't come in right away. It might wait till the first chorus, and let's say the rest of the rhythm section comes in. Bass, keys, guitar, and then the vocals come in. And the vocalist turns around and looks at you, the drummer, and says, it's too slow or it's too fast. You just kind of hold your hands up. You're just like, I'm not playing yet, yo. I didn't start this one off.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So the answer is yes. So, yeah, our next subtopic
is so pitiful, man.
It's pitiful, man.
You're so self-absorbed, you can't realize that the person you're wearing out is not playing.
It happens.
That is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah,
That's
it
like-
happens.
That's like blaming the sound man for the tempo. Come on.
Yeah. So here we are talking about tempo issues, time fluctuation. And the first,
I do it all the time.
the first thing I want to say is that it's not just the drummer, folks. Everybody should be aware that everybody in the band, and that includes vocalists, are in charge of their own time feel.
Good Lord. No kidding. You know, the age-old, it doesn't feel right. It must be the drummer thing. It's like we've talked about before, you know. Well, it could be that the bass player's high.
Could be.
You know, the keyboard player's drunk. You know, I mean, those things factor into feel, right?
A little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think what we ought to do.
And then I got to go get high and drunk to try to figure it all out. I just can't do that anymore.
Listen, man, I don't want you to overcompensate.
All right.
For other people's.
I got to stand my ground, right?
Yeah, for other people's inequities. Come on. Be that shining beacon.
Okay. All right. For all of you people on my future gigs, man, peer pressure is out. I'm not doing any of that.
At least it's out until after the first set.
Well, yeah. Then we're pretty good. Let's get altered.
So let's talk about a few ways to kind of help in these scenarios. Because the one thing that I just refuse to do, and John, I know you are absolutely in this same ballpark, is if you get into one of these situations and you have to come in, 8, 16, 32 bars into the tune, and you need to slow something down or speed something up, you don't do it drastically. Just refuse to do that. It's got to be subtle. And one of the things that I like to do is when you come in, do the best that you can to widen your beat. Make it as inviting and as open and as big as possible. And then that way you can kind of gracefully and gradually get either up to or back to where you need to be. Jeff Hamilton used to say, I want to make my beat, my groove, inviting for a large group or for any group to play with. Mm-hmm. Therefore, if we have to make a move one way or the other, you're not driving this real staccato pinpoint sort of groove. I don't know why people think that that's the way to get people into the right tempo. There's a bassist that you and I used to play with from time to time that if he didn't feel like that the time was where it was, he would play these real short staccato pinpoint notes to try to hammer it into your head. And that's the worst thing you can do. It's anxiety provoking.
Yeah, that's just bullying, I think.
There was an episode that was done about
that. I remember that.
Remember that?
I had blocked all that out, but now I'm revisiting it. Pinpoint staccato notes from a bass player. That's bullying.
It doesn't work, man.
No.
It just does not work.
Almost do the opposite if you want to try to fix something.
That's what you got to do. That's what you have to do. And then, you can also, with the nuances of time, with where we play at, playing in front of the beat, behind the beat, and widening it like we've talked about, it's very easy that if you have an unresponsive player in the band, and this is also saying that they're not incredibly off, but we're talking about a nuance if they're playing a little bit behind or a little bit forward. For the sake of the music, you can absolutely bend their way if they're unresponsive. I think it benefits everybody if that's the case.
Agreed.
John, what do you like to do when people are all over you about volume?
At this point, I take it as a challenge, and I kind of like playing soft. So I just am I get into this, okay, what can I do to make this still groove, but bring it back? And I'm kind of digging on that. And it's something that, I don't like playing loud anymore, really loud. Comfortable's fine, but I almost kind of dig this thing. Now, a lot of times it depends on how they're asking you that can dictate your mindset or your attitude about it or even how you respond. But if someone's real cool about it, I'll go out of my way to try to accommodate. but don't call an AC/DC tune.
Yeah, because I mean there are certain forms and certain styles of music that suffer if they don't have a certain kind of volume level, a certain kind of presence.
Right.
And so you have to hit the drums a certain way to get to that, right? But I completely agree with you that
85% of church drummers in the United States of America have to deal with.
Good point.
Listen to that rockin' CCM tune. Can you play it with brushes? Even though you're in a cave?
We can have Worship Dude 1000.
He can weigh in on that one, huh?
Absolutely. But one of the problems and one of the times that I have issue with it is I've been on many a gig where I feel like people, either audience members, clients, could even be other people in the band, they're predispositioned to think that the drums are the loudest thing.
Oh, definitely.
When they're not a lot of times. There's been times, man, when guitarists, bassists will have amps on 12, but yet they still say, man, the drums are really loud.
So jive.
And it's just not the case. Just not the case. So that's one of the times that I have an issue with it. And
you know what pisses me off about that? A guitar player, a bass player, and a keyboard player all can play with the same velocity and the same approach they do at 3 or 10.
It's true.
Whereas we can't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, cut me a break here, man. You're like wearing me out about this. But, either A, you're playing insanely loud and completely oblivious to it or don't care, or B, you're not taking into account I have to drastically alter my approach to playing to accommodate, whereas you don't. So there's a rub there in that, like I said, I don't mind making an effort, man. But, if there's not some team playing going on, then it becomes a little more of a problem.
The majority of the time, if I can have a moment of explanation, like if it's at a sound check or on a break,
you like knowing it's going to be
a
problem. Yeah,
I will say the exact same thing that you've just said regarding people who are amplified like that have a opportunity to play at the same intensity, just at a lower knob twist, so to speak. Whereas the one thing that's very different about us when we play acoustic drums is not only is there a difference when you hit a snare drum at a ghost note level volume-wise versus a full accented stroke level, but there's a different characteristic in sound also that happens.
Absolutely.
That's actually probably more important to us as drummers than sheer volume. It's not just volume, it's the characteristic of the sound that you get.
I would agree.
Because the thing is again, if you've been requested to play an AC/DC song and you're having to play ghost note backbeats, not only is it volume-wise restrictive, but it's just overall sound and feel-wise restrictive. So I think a moment of explanation with that a lot of times will do you more good. And most of the time also most band leaders and people who have been complaining about the volume will actually get it, when you explain it that way. So that's one of the ways I've had probably the most success in dealing with that, with getting punched in the face over the volume.
I think also, and there's not a ton of people that listen to this that aren't drummers, but understand this too. When you're in a room and you're trying to accommodate volume as a drummer, sometimes give someone a little chance to do that. Let them try to get a handle on it. Don't just 4 bars into the first tune at soundcheck be flipping out, because sometimes you have to feel the room. You have to feel how your drums are responding. You have, do I have the right cymbals? Should I use lighter sticks? All of these things are factoring in. We're desperately trying to figure it out. Trust me.
Yeah.
But sometimes it might take a little trial and error, or a little, thinking left instead of right, that kind of thing. So just be patient in regards to that. I played gigs where someone's like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. And it turns out being a great gig because I was allowed, little time to figure out where I need to live. volume wise and intensity wise and all that. And that's something I think sometimes overlooked. It's just like the first snare drum hit and it's over. Like, oh, my mind's made up. This is a problem. Well, let me figure it out first.
Excellent point. The next area that I want to touch on is one that it might be one of the less common times that you get bugged, but it's nonetheless just as frustrating. And there's times when you feel like you're playing appropriately for the music, and then you have a band leader that turns around to you and actually wants you to play more, wants you to play a lot more. And sometimes it's not only more note-wise, it actually is more volume-wise. There was one time, John, do you remember there was a little club in downtown Atlanta? It's been 52 different names like every other club, but for a period of time it's called Lou's Blues Review.
Oh, the little under the parking lot thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
I played with Lou one night in there, and his whole thing all night long was, man, it had a house kit, and it was like, man, I want you to kill bass drum. I want that bass drum humping. And, I was playing it just like I always normally would play, maybe with a tad bit more vigor. And suddenly, man, in the middle of one of the sets, bass drum goes out. And he turns around, man, and just like with fire in his, man, I don't have need more kick drum from you. The actual cable somehow came out of the mic.
Lame.
I blamed that on my manly right leg.
You just kicked that mic ass, man.
Just
love it.
Amazing, huh?
That cable's like, I can't take this manliness. I'm out of here.
And it was a monster cable at that, right?
Come on.
Kicked the
they
monster
didn't even have
cable's
them
ass.
then. now you're really going out on a limb here.
And that's one example of that, but another one, and probably the one that bothers me the most, and I know this gets under your skin, man, is when you have a nervous band leader, somebody who's, we'll go ahead and say that they're a little inconfident or unconfident in their own skills. A lot of times they like for you to play a bunch of stuff to kind of either take away the spotlight of maybe their perceived inadequacy or to cover up some of their perceived inadequacy. I used to do some work with a guy, man, that just wanted me to play drum fills and just do stuff like a psychopath back behind the drums. And it always bugged me, man. It always bothered me.
Certain tunes that just made no sense.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
Man, I think, though I would absolutely want to end the gig and maybe my own life if someone asked me to do that, I could think of a lot of guys that wouldn't mind that at all. Well, you want me to play louder and more? This is awesome. So like maybe that band leader needs to find those guys.
That's true, because with me, I always like to think that what I'm playing, the way I'm interpreting something, if I know what I'm doing with a song, then I'm doing the right thing musically, that I'm serving the music correctly.
But we know people that wouldn't mind playing like Billy Cobham over Beatles songs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
I know some people that do that.
Those guys need to hook up, is what I'm saying.
To me, man, it just feels like I'm lying.
Oh, horrible.
I just feel like I'm lying. I can't have fun, on the gig. It's a bad thing. I mean, it's the old syndrome of like, you've heard people say like, well, do you get pissed off when people tell you to turn down? And you go, well, yeah. And so, well, would you get pissed if somebody told you to turn up? Well, this is kind of the same thing, man. It doesn't bother me when anybody tells me one way or the other if it's applicable.
Right.
Makes
sense.
But yeah, I would get pissed off if somebody told me to play more when it's not what it calls for.
No, I would hate that. I would, yeah, me. I'd be like, I would probably deliberately play less.
Well, one of the genres I think that sometimes falls victim to this is a lot of the Christian contemporary music will have the proverbial busy drummer, And
it's more the gospel stuff than the CCM stuff, though.
well, man, I've got some pretty specific examples, man, I can
Yeah,
bring to,
you're right.
to
It's
some of
this
that.
30-second note thing has been a big.
It's
a big
this
trend.
30-second note snare drum kind of a groove over a ballad type thing that, to me, it can only be one of a couple things. One, it is the composer or leader of the group that feels like that this song needs energy or needs something to make the song better than it actually is. Or you do have the drummer who is guilty of overplaying.
Yeah, that's true. I think with that 30-second note trend, I always pretend that it just like is musically unnecessary, but it probably comes down to the fact that I can't play it. Especially at 7 in the morning on Sunday after getting home at 2. I'm like, nah, that's not going to work out.
But one of the things that I find that's a complete and total anomaly as we take this train right off the track is that I would say that with myself, 90% of the time when I go into an early gig like that, and let's say it's done with a sequence or a click, I have more problem with rushing than I do laying back or being behind.
100%.
So you're the same way then?
If I'm tired, I push. And I think I have a theory about that. I think forever, though we don't realize it, we're the bridle.
Yeah.
We're holding back everybody. And then to the point where you're just like, I don't have the energy to hold all you back. And then you just kind of rush with them.
That's an interesting point, man.
I mean, not with everyone, but in general, I mean, I kind of feel like maybe that's part of it. But when I'm tired, I push more than not, for sure. And I know a number of people that have said the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird little, but maybe it is like you can't put up the fight.
Yeah. Well, I just ruined a perfect segue when we were talking about overplaying a few minutes ago, because that's where I wanted to take it next. But I took the train off the tracks there for a moment. Sometimes you can be on a gig and you can be absolutely playing the exact right groove. And I'll give you a couple examples of it. In like a rock or pop thing, you could either be playing, say, like a TOP, like a tower power thing. You could be playing some kind of a Garibaldi 16th note linear groove. You could be doing like a dance tune, like that Jackson's tune, Shake Your Body Down to the Ground. A rock tune, like Don't Stop Believing. Those tunes have all got a lot of stuff going on in there. And then somebody turns around and they're like, man, can you freaking calm that crap down? This is another time that I wish we had a video podcast.
Can you put that mess on 2 and 4?
And I would have to say that the majority of the time, if you're doing it correctly, you're playing it with the right time feel and you're playing it with the right volume level, with the right intensity for it, most of the time you're going to be okay. I've found that whenever I have students that come to me, and let's say they've had to play one of those tunes, or let's say they're playing in a jazz band, and this is a big one that happens a lot of times. Say they're playing in a jazz band, and we've been working on in lessons when they're playing exercises and they're feathering the bass drum. A lot of times when they go into a rehearsal or a gig situation, bass drum will get too loud. In other words, their feel or volume will get out of whack on something they should be playing, and then the band leader or somebody goes, man, you need to stop playing the bass drum. Or like a lot of times, another thing that's common is, say they're playing a Latin tune and they're doing a whole lot of like cymbal bell stuff between the toms and stuff. That'll get out of hand, too loud in volume, or the feel will get wonky on it. And they'll go, man, you got to simplify that. You got to break that thing down to something that's a little bit more manageable for the rest of the band. So, I'll kind of give you some push and pull on that one. That if you're playing the right thing, but yet it's the wrong feel or wrong volume, you got to be careful on that. But if you are doing the right thing and you're playing it the right way, sometimes you get a little bit of also that insecure leader, insecure vocalist that maybe instead of wanting you to cover them up, they don't want you to outshine them. And so you have to mind your P's and Q's a little bit, but then again, stand up for your right if you're doing the right thing at the right time and you're playing it correctly.
That's what it comes down to. You know, if you're playing inappropriately, you're opening up the door for abuse or complaint or criticism. But if you're not, how much are you paying me?
Yeah.
Because if you want me to dumb that down, I'll do it. But I want to make sure, you know, like I'm getting paid to do that.
The
I like getting
sage.
paid. There might be that one person in the audience who was going to hire me for that major U.S. tour that said he didn't play Shake Your Body Down correctly.
You know who wrote that groove? Greg Phil and Gaines.
Oh, that's no surprise to me.
Yeah.
If you told me he wrote every pop hit for the last 30 years, I'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, Greg. Oh, of course he did. So why wouldn't he come up with a great groove?
The house in the Hollywood Hills will tell you that. John, how do you feel about people who want you to read their mind?
Most of the time, I don't want to be in there.
It's not.
There's nothing good happening from someone that thinks you can read their mind.
Oh.
And there's nothing inside that mind that I'm interested in exploring.
It is so frustrating and so confusing, and you just get beat up on a gig, and there's nothing you can do about it except chalk it up to experience or try to, talk to the rational side. But one of the things that bothers me the most is when you go into a gig and you've either had a rehearsal and or sound check / rehearsal. You get in there, you figure out an arrangement. Everybody seems to be on the same page, and then you get to the gig. And then it all falls apart. People expect you to know exactly where they're going and then will call you out on the stage.
That's a bunch of crap.
Look back at you with that scowl. Just the most unprofessional thing ever, man.
You know, most of those people, too, they'll like tell you about the guy they play with that can read their mind. Oh, really? Yeah, man, we've been doing this for 20 years, man. He can read my mind. Oh, no kidding. Well, that we've been playing together 20 minutes. Why can't I? Turn around and sing.
And count the next tune off. It's infuriating. I
had a gig with a guy in St. Louis, and this was when I was really young and
we're going in the same direction because I got a story too.
And
yeah.
Just not in the mood for any kind of nonsense. And he was wearing me out one night, and I just stopped in the middle of the song and I held out my sticks. And I go, why don't you show me? And he didn't bother me the rest of the night, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Ha-ha.
Man, when I was about probably 22 years old or so, man, I got just embarrassed, man, on stage in front of a bunch of friends. Where a lady, I think I might have mentioned this in an earlier episode, but a lady.
This is the Queen of the Blues?
It is.
Yeah, I remember
It
this.
is. You do remember this, okay? Where not only did she want everybody in the band to read her mind as far as where the arrangements went, but she would call out these nebulous phrases that were, for the most part, her own phrases, and they meant to do certain things. And one of the ones was to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
At 22, I didn't know what that meant.
You know, was someone shooting a gun or something?
And where I was playing, it was very possible that was the case.
And that would be what you'd say.
Yeah. But to her, to the floor was to either go completely and totally to the softest volume you can play or drop out.
Right.
And not only
I never would have guessed that.
Yeah. And, it was one of those things where I couldn't hear her very well and much less hear what she had, what she meant for that.
Oh. Did I ever tell you my Joe Frazier story?
Joe Frazier wouldn't go down, man, when freaking Ali hit him. That's the only person.
No, that's true, man. Like Ali had a gig and Frazier was like, nah, man, I'm going to keep playing. I played a gig one time and Joe and Ali were actually both there. And Joe fancied himself an entertainer.
A singer. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
A quotation marks singer. And he decided he wanted to do I Feel Good. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. We do it and we're playing blah blah blah. And he just was like, made it clear, like break it down. And I knew, okay, we break it down. And he turns around and he starts talking to me. And I don't understand a word this dude. He's hard to understand if you're just sitting there having a conversation with him, let alone. I'm like, I know I'm like just in sheer horror. Like, I cannot deliver what you want, and you're going to punch me, and I'm going to die.
And his fist is probably like a 9-inch iron skillet, too, coming at you.
Maybe two of them, you know? And in my mind, I'm just like, he's going to be so mad at me. He's just going to kill me. and you know, afterwards he was just like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I was trying to, and I know it was loud and blah, blah, blah. He was fine, perfectly cool. But in the moment, I'm like, he's like, he might as well have been speaking, you know, German. I'm just like, I can't hear anything you're saying. None of it makes sense. I wasn't even shaking my head. I was just like in fear, like just a deer in headlights, man. It was the funniest thing. Like, oh yeah, if you have someone in the heat of battle giving you direction and you can't follow it, wouldn't it be great if it's Joe Frazier? Jeez.
You just added a new meaning to the topic, punching bag syndrome.
How about that? We've come full circle.
We've come full circle. Well, folks, first, use the term punching bag syndrome, credit it to us, and put it in the great American drumming lexicon moving forward.
It is official.
Well, we hope you got something out of this topic. A lot of these little hot spots that we talk about, it's something that if you haven't experienced it, if you stay in this game long enough, you will. And so maybe some of our past experiences and some of the different solutions that we've given you in this show will help you out moving forward.
I like it.
So, John, let's finish up today with a segment that we have not done in nearly 3 months.
Shut up.
It's been 10 episodes, man.
For real?
It's been 10 episodes. Wow. We've just been busy, man. We've had a lot of things that have happened. Like I said before, we had the holidays. We had a couple of best ofs that were in there, a bunch of special episodes with some interviews, some artist features, blah, 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 advisory board, all that good stuff. So it's been on the back burner. But
crazy.
What we want to finish off today with is a great drum track. So what do you say, me or you first?
Go ahead.
All right. My great drum track is from a wonderful drummer named Lenny White.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and John, this is another one of those tracks that it kind of goes back to some different drum tracks that have fallen, and some different drummers that we've talked about that have played on this one particular label. This track is off of an album called the Griffith Park Collection that I think has come up just every now and then, but the label that it was on, we've talked about this label on half a dozen different shows in one capacity or another. There was a very short-lived label on the Elektra company's label called Elektra Musician. And essentially what it was it was a stab that Elektra had at launching a jazz label. And they did it for a short period of time. It lasted for a few years. But, man, there were some really good recordings that were made on there. And this one is the Griffith Park Collection. And the tune in question is L's Bop. L as in Lenny White. He wrote this tune. It's an up-tempo jazz tune that has a little section of 5/4 that's used as an intro and in an outro, and also at the top of each chorus of solos. And Lenny just burns on this track. Just absolutely kills. There's a few things that's worth talking about on here. And from a playing standpoint, he's got a nice solo toward the end, and then when the song is fading out, they play this 5/4 vamp that's found at the beginning and that's found at the outro, and then in between choruses that he solos over in 5. So it's a very cool showcase for Lenny. He wrote the tune, so naturally I'm sure he had that in mind. And then another thing that I want to bring to your attention about this track is listen to his cymbals on here. A lot of people think in terms of Lenny White, you think of him as like a fusion drummer, right? Because I would say that probably his most popular stuff might have been with Return to Forever. And so you think of him in a fusion kind of setting. But Man, if you go back and listen to some of the stuff he played back in the mid to late 60s when he was just a kid, he was playing straight ahead. And so he's got some great old Ks, man. Just some wonderful sounding cymbals. Everybody would love to have the cymbals that he used on this recording.
You think he still has them?
I hope he does.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, they're just tremendous sounding cymbals. There's great solos on there from everybody. Chick Corea has great solo on there. Freddie Hubbard has tremendous trumpet solo.
Sweet. I got to check it out.
You know, one thing I want to throw in here, not to step on anybody's toes, but I think it's kind of an interesting side note. I feel like that there is a little bit of Scientology happening on this record because 3 members of this quintet were members of that religion at that time.
Maybe they funded the label.
Well, I don't know about the label, but maybe this recording, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But Lenny White, Stanley Clarke, and Chick Corea.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little side note. That seems to be a hot topic that's in the news a lot these days.
They should get Leah Remini to sing with them.
Well, Nancy Wilson and Chaka Khan actually did sing with them, that exact same group, on the same label, but they rebranded it and called it Echoes of an Era.
Crazy.
Isn't that kooky?
Yep.
John, what you got?
Well, I have a track that just kind of is a little bit left of what this guy's known for. And it was born out of me kind of digging into a set list for a show I'm putting together. And the tune is Your Gold Teeth 2, Steely Dan, Katie Lyde, my pal Jeff Picaro. And it I hadn't listened to that in a long time, and it was sort of reminded me that, you know, he's got a lot of depth and probably had a lot more together than he'd ever lead on, that a lot of his recordings would let you know, and also just sort of, he was just kind of self-effacing in that sense, like that. But this track shows a side of him that, you know, definitely a little more jazz influence. There's some just touch things that are quite a bit different. And the thing that I was reminded of, and it started with that tune Gaucho, when I was checking out some things he did, that he had this ability to navigate through kind of tricky or a little off the beaten path phrases or figures, and it was always like one of those guys that, like, everything he did and everything he hit and every sound that factored into that figure, like, was just perfect. And he does a lot of that in this tune, where it's just like, you're not like, he should have gone this way or that way. It's kind of this just musical gift that some of these guys have, that they just navigate through something difficult, and it's not like they're flailing through it or doing something predictable. It's just this musical sort of nuances that just play into that figure and make it even more cool than it is. And it's hard to do. We've recorded enough and done stuff like that where you have to really think about it, you know, and think like, that probably shouldn't be a tom there. Maybe it should be a splash cymbal. It should be an open hi-hat thing or something. And he has that magic ability in this, that he does some of that on this tune. And to me, it's just sort of shows a different side of him that I really dig.
One thing I want to say about that is the orchestration sensibilities of him and any great studio drummer a lot of times are so subtle and go unnoticed until you have to play that tune.
Man, that is so true.
And then let's take, for example, that tune Gaucho that he played on. Slow tune, you don't think anything about it, right? You listen to it and you just go, this is just a great feeling tune. But like you mentioned, there are all kinds of little hits and twists and turns that are inside of that tune that until you sit down and play it, and then it's becomes so awkward and so left-handed for you to get to those kicks and fills and hits and stuff like that.
Just figuring them out first and foremost.
That's when you realize the brilliance of somebody like that.
It's incredible, man.
They make it seem so easy, and it's so, when you listen to it, it's kind of like, of course that's what's supposed to happen there. And then you sit down and try to play it, and it's kind of like, wow, how did you get from point A to point B?
And I know between those points, a lot of times, it's almost like this unfocused sort of flailing a lot of times that we will do. I don't care how accomplished you are, that you know, sometimes that just is like, I'm just going to get through that figure and make sure I'm playing it rhythmically correct. But then what sets these guys apart is the tones and what they're hitting and why, and the flow of a cymbal into a tom thing that creates that said flow. Those kind of things are magic. And he's got that in droves on this tune, as well as Gaucho, which is another one that check out. But that was what struck me as cool about, besides the fact that it shows a little bit different side of him, is still navigating through that stuff. And I mean, then you can get into really heady stuff like Zappa and some of that stuff, and these guys are bringing it like, whoa, whatever. But in a pop sense, there's a reason some guys are getting paid the big bucks.
Awesome, man. That's brilliant. And again, what you touched on regarding how he approached that tune, that's a show into itself.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Success for the first topic show of 2018, I say.
I think so. If you have any different opinion, keep it to yourself.
All right, guys. Well, the website, drummersweeklygroovecast.com, has been up for a little while now. Mm-hmm. But if you haven't been over to see it, point your browsers over to drummersweeklygroovecast.com. Click through. We got all of our episodes that are up there. We have some videos up there. All of our contact info. You can get in touch with us at through our contact form, which actually goes to our Gmail account, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. All of our social media is still active as well. We've got our Facebook page, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast, and Twitter, we are at DWGroovecast. We always welcome hearing from you guys. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you want to hear, all that good stuff. We appreciate all comers. And lastly, don't forget, get on over to iTunes, subscribe to the show. You can also catch us at Google Play Podcast, Stitcher, Podbean, anywhere you access your favorite podcasts. Subscribe today, and while you're inside of iTunes, when you're on our Drummers Weekly Groovecast homepage, leave us a short written review. It helps us. It helps everybody who wants to try to find a drumming podcast or just a general musicians podcast to find us and listen to us. And plus, if you leave us,
you might win something.
You might win something. That's right. It's got ancillary benefits, John. Ancillary benefits.
Hey, I like it. Hey, bookmark that website, because you know, Phil and I are going to get into some contentious political discussions and berating gear we don't like soon. That's going to be kind of more the content of that website, right?
That's right. We're going to call it Confirmation Bias, featuring
Phil
and
we could just
Jon.
call it Facebook.
Oh, well said. Well played, sir.
No, but really, check
well
it out.
Played.
We'll try to be a little more mindful of a little action on that.
Yes, sir.
Not just let it sit idle.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this week. Subscribe. We're here every Monday, and then the select first and third Thursdays with Accountability Thursday. Until then, we're signing off. See you later. Bye.